There's a conflict brewing thousands of miles away that's about to do more than just make headlines. It's about to reach right into your wallet. Today, we're going to break down how a fight in a tiny strait could upend the financial system that has pretty much dictated the price of everything you buy for the last 50 years. This isn't just about geopolitics. It's about your money, your savings, your future. So let's get into it. And this isn't some abstract economic theory, right? We're talking about the price you pay for gas, the cost of your food at the grocery store, the actual value of your savings. What feels like a distant headline is really the trigger for a seismic shift in a 50-year-old economic order. And you've got to understand what's happening to see what's coming.
And boom, here's the first tremor. In just 2 weeks, the price of Brent crude oil rocketed to almost $120 a barrel. Now, this is not just a price bump. This is a violent shock to the system. It's a flashing red light telling us that a critical link in the world's energy supply chain has just snapped.
But here's what makes this whole situation so fascinating. The physical blockade, the stopping of the oil tankers, that's just the opening act. The real battle, the one with consequences that could last for decades, is a financial one. It's a direct, calculated attack on the US dollar's 50-year reign as the king of global energy. Okay, so let's start with the physical crisis. The Strait of Hormuz, it's not just another shipping lane. You have to think of it as the world's energy jugular. This tiny, narrow strip of water is the artery that a massive portion of the world's oil flows through. And right now, its extreme vulnerability is on full display for everyone to see. Get this, 20%. That is how much of the entire world's daily oil supply has to pass through this single, narrow channel. And in response to recent attacks, Iran has essentially sealed it off. They've used mines, drones, all tanker traffic is halted. The flow has just stopped. Cold. And this just shows you the sheer scale of the chaos. The global energy market overnight lost access to nearly 14 million barrels of oil every single day. Now, the International Energy Agency, they're basically the world's energy watchdog, is talking about opening up emergency reserves. But honestly, that's just a Band-Aid. That would only cover the gap for a few weeks, tops. The pressure is building, and it's building fast. And right here, this is the moment. This is where a regional conflict explodes into a full-blown global financial war. Iran has stated its price to reopen the strait, and it's not some diplomatic agreement. No, they are demanding a fundamental rewrite of the rules of global energy. Their demand? All oil payments must be made not in US dollars, but in Chinese Yuan. Let's be perfectly clear. This is a direct shot at the very foundation of American financial power. Now, to really get why that demand is so incredibly explosive, we have to pull back and look at the system it's threatening. For half a century, the world has operated on what's called the petrodollar system. And this isn't just some banking term. It's the architecture that has allowed America to project its power, and in a very real way, it has made the rest of the world pay for America's government spending. It all goes back to the early 1970s. The US had just cut the dollar's link to gold, right? So it needed a new way to anchor its currency to something the world absolutely had to have. The answer? Oil. A deal was struck with Saudi Arabia, and the terms were simple. The U.S. provides military protection, and in return, Saudi Arabia agrees to price all of its oil exports exclusively in U.S. dollars. The rest of OPEC, the big oil cartel, they all followed suit, and just like that, the petrodollar system was born. This deal created something I like to call a magic recycling loop. And if you understand this, you understand the last 50 years of geopolitics. Let's just walk through it. 1. Every country needs oil to run its economy. Simple enough. 2. To buy that oil, they first have to go out and buy US dollars. This one step creates this huge, constant artificial demand for dollars all over the world. 3. Oil-producing countries like Saudi Arabia sell their oil and get paid in mountains of US dollars. So what do they do with all that cash? That's step 4, the clever part. They recycle it by buying the safest dollar asset they can find, US Treasury bonds. And what are treasuries? They're basically just IOUs from the US government. So here it is, step 5, the magic trick. The world's need for oil has indirectly forced every country on Earth to lend money to the United States, which in turn has funded its government spending and its massive deficits for half a century. For decades, this system was basically unbreakable. Why? Because there was no other choice. If you wanted to buy oil or make any large international payment, you had to use the dollar and its financial system. But that's just not true anymore. A whole new set of financial plumbing has been quietly built in the background. And this crisis is showing us all that it's finally ready to go live.
For as long as most of us can remember, a global system has been SWIFT. The best way to think of it is as a secure messaging app for banks. A bank in Germany wants to send money to Japan, it uses SWIFT to send the instructions. But here's the key. SWIFT is dominated by the West, which makes it an incredibly powerful tool for enforcing sanctions. But now there's a real alternative. China's cross-border interbank payment system, or CIPS. It does the exact same thing as SWIFT, but it uses the Chinese Yuan and, this is crucial, it operates completely outside of Western control. It's a parallel financial highway, and it is sanction-proof. And look, this isn't some small niche project. Just look at this growth. It is absolutely explosive. The number of banks plugged directly into SWIFTs has shot up by over 900% in just a decade. It now connects over 5,000 banking institutions across more than 190 countries. This isn't a blueprint for something that might happen. It's a global reality right now. And that number, that's the annual transaction volume that CIPS is already handling. Let me put that in perspective for you. In US dollar terms, that's over 25 times $1 trillion a year. CIPS is already a systemically important piece of the global financial puzzle. The pipes have been laid, they've been tested, and as you can see, they are carrying a massive amount of traffic.
And you have to understand, this shift isn't just about geopolitics, it's about simple, powerful economics. For example, a German company shipping goods to China can save about 2% on the entire transaction just by paying directly in yuan through CIPS. Why? Because it avoids the extra step of converting euros to dollars, then dollars to yuan. For a big corporation, that 2% adds up to millions of dollars in savings every year. As one banker put it, choosing the yuan is becoming a commercial choice, not a political one. Okay, so if the petrodollar system created that magic loop that funded America, what happens when that loop breaks? What are the consequences when the world no longer needs to buy and hold trillions of US dollars just to get the energy it needs? This is the great unwinding. Let's start with this absolutely staggering number, over $34 trillion. That's the US national debt. And the petrodollar system was the key to managing this. Remember that magic recycling loop? It created a built-in, captive audience for US government debt. Other countries had to buy dollars for oil, and then they used those dollars to buy US Treasuries. So the critical question is, what happens when that built-in demand just evaporates? Who is going to buy all this debt? And this brings us to a really dangerous concept: importing inflation. See, for decades, the US has been able to export its inflation. Because the world needed all those dollars for trade, the US could create more and more money without causing prices to explode at home. The global economy acted like a giant sponge, just soaking up all those excess dollars. But if the world no longer needs those dollars and starts selling them, that sponge gets squeezed out. And all those trillions of dollars held overseas come flooding back into the US economy. And when that happens, you suddenly have way more dollars chasing the same amount of goods and services right here at home. And that means prices explode. The cost of everything you import, your phone, your car, your clothes, it would skyrocket. The purchasing power of your savings, your salary, would be absolutely decimated. And in a really dark twist of irony, the very system that allowed America to live beyond its means for 50 years would suddenly show up to present the bill, in the form of devastating hyperinflation. But these shockwaves from de-dollarization wouldn't just stop at America's borders. Its closest allies, especially over in Europe, would find themselves caught in a terrible crossfire, facing a devastating economic trap with no easy way out. This slide lays out that trap perfectly. On one side, you've got Europe. It's politically tied to buying its energy from Western sources, priced at a premium in US dollars. On the other side, you've got Asia. Its industrial competitors can increasingly buy discounted sanctioned oil from places like Iran and Russia, paying for it cheaply and easily in Chinese Yuan. What's the result? A catastrophic loss of competitiveness for European industry. We're talking about deindustrialization, as factories are forced to shut down or move east where energy is just a fraction of the cost. So what this crisis in the Strait of Hormuz has really done is hit the accelerator on a process that was already happening. The unipolar moment. That era where the entire global economy ran on a single set of financial rails designed in Washington, well, that's over. We are now witnessing, in real time, the live deployment of a parallel system, one for energy and one for finance. And that leaves us with the defining question of our time. The 50-year reign of the petrodollar, for all its faults, created a certain kind of stability. We are now entering an age of two competing systems, two rival currencies, and two fundamentally different ideas about how the world should work. The endgame for the dollar has begun, and what comes next is dangerously uncertain.